I've only eaten this when I've made it, so I don't actually know if this is like the proper way to make it, but it tastes good. I wouldn't be showing you guys if it didn't taste good. Hey guys, welcome to That's Cooked. Today we're gonna be doing a delicious savory chickpea pancake with some smoked cheddar, a bit of pumpkin, a bit of rosemary. It's gonna be fantastic. You know, we're really gonna satisfy those savory pancake cravings that everyone just keeps telling me about all the time. Rightio, so the first thing we're gonna do is get our pumpkin into the oven. I'll probably use about 300 grams of pumpkin. And I'm just gonna take the seeds out. The easiest way to do this is just with a spoon and just sort of like, I'm just gonna cut into like, just some nice sort of reasonably chunky pieces. Just like that. We've got some greaseproof paper over here. Pop the pumpkin on. Nice amount of olive oil. Nice amount of salt. And we're going to quite a hot oven, 200 degrees, about 35 minutes. And now for the chickpea pancake, quite an easy thing to do. Going to get a cup of besan flour, which is just chickpea flour, which is just dry chickpeas blitzed up to like a powder. So I'm going to pop that in. Then I'm going to pop in about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, a generous pinch of salt. And we're going to go in with 1 3/4 cups of water. And then we're gonna get a really brightly colored whisk, because that's what you have at your house. And we're just gonna whisk it. So we get a pretty thin sort of batter, and we're just gonna let it sit for about half an hour. You can also like make this sit like overnight, and it gets a bit more of like a fermenty sort of flavor, which is how people traditionally do it, but half an hour will do just fine. The next thing we're gonna do is our burnt butter like dressing. So we're gonna need about 50 grams of butter, some rosemary, and some lemon. And just turn it on. So when we say burnt butter or burnt noisette, they say in French, we're just like caramelizing the milk solids in the butter, and then that gives like a really nice nutty flavor. Most of you guys are gonna make your burnt butter. What's gonna happen is you're gonna start seeing it sort of bubble a little bit. You're gonna hear it sort of sizzling. You're gonna get a bit worried. I really do trust me. We need to burn the butter because that's where we go with the flavor. If you tilt it, you can see like the little bits browning over there. And you can smell it. You can like smell the nuttiness of it. Cool, so now at this point, the butter's nice and hot. I'm gonna turn it down. Then you get a sprig of rosemary. And we're just gonna pop it in. And it's gonna sizzle a little bit like that. So let that go in for about 15 seconds. Turn it off. Get half a lemon and squeeze it in. And it's gonna make a bit of a noise. It could potentially spit a little bit, but it's all right. That's nice and nut brown. We're just gonna keep it warm. Obviously, if it gets cold, then the butter's gonna solidify. Cool, so now we're gonna make a little kale garnish. It's like a raw kale salad, but it's really simple. So we're thinking about this sort of pancake. We're gonna have the pancake on the bottom, then we're gonna have a little melty cheddar cheese, bits of roasted pumpkin, the burnt butter dressing, and some nice fresh kale leaves to really cut through that. I've got some normal green kale here. If you wanna use like another cabbage, you can. Use whatever the fuck you want. And just get rid of the stalk. Don't throw the stalk out. You can use it in many different ways. Put it in your stocks. Make, like if you're making a soup, put it in the base of the soup with the onion. So we've got our kale over here. We're just gonna put a bit of salt in, half a lemon in. What's juice? Ooh, juicy. And we're just gonna really work like the kale. What we're doing now is that the acid and the salt are just breaking down the kale. And it's gonna look a bit crumpled and like not pleasant, but on the final dish, it's gonna be exactly what we need. So far we've had the chickpea batter ready, we've got our kale for the topping, we've got our burnt butter dressing, and we've got our pumpkin in the oven. And it's done, and what we're looking for, a bit of caramelization, and that's all we want. Just like that, gorgeous. As you can see, I put like a knife through it, just to make sure it's cooked, and that's fine. We can just leave that at room temperature until we're ready to go. Now we're ready to make our chickpea pancake. We've had the batter sitting for about half an hour. Get a large non-stick pan, and we want to make this like ripping hot, because that's what's going to get a really nice crust on the chickpea. So chickpea pancake's sat here. You can see now it's like more viscous, and it's going to thicken up. It sort of does this thing where it just soaks up more and more liquid. This is like sort of like a crepe batter consistency, because if it's too sort of thick, you're going to get this like claggy texture. And in the meantime, I've just got some smoked cheddar over here. cut it into like a few thin bits, just like that. If you want to grate it, you can, but I sort of like it having like around the sort of pancake. Like I don't want like a consistent sort of melted top. We're going to use a lot of olive oil for this because again, we want a nice crust. And make sure we're getting all the corners. Okay, so we can see a bit of smoke happening from the oil, which is exactly what we need. And then we're going to go in. I'm just going to get like a sprig of rosemary, like that, and just pop it on top. Depending how big your pan is, I sort of got enough batter here for 2 pancakes. Just stressing that you don't want to be too thick. Just let it go a bit, get a bit of color on the bottom. And then we're going to pop it into a 220-degree oven for about 6 to 8 minutes. All right, guys, so at this point, we're going to check in on a little farinata. See, it's bubbling. We're going to get our smoked cheddar cheese and just lay it on it. We can check that it's cooked because when we press it, it's like not raw, which is always a great way to check if something's cooked, to make sure it's not raw. It's actually a technique I learned back in the day. We're just gonna pop this now back into the oven just to melt that cheese. We don't want like loads of color on it, just to warm it. And in the meantime, I've got everything ready. I've got my pumpkin ready, I've got my seasoned kale ready, and I've got my burnt butter dressing ready. So, I'll put it in for another about 2 minutes, and it's got really nice sort of melted cheese. What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to loosen this up. You can see it's nice and crispy. Beautiful. So we get a bit of our pumpkin. And then we get our burnt butter dressing. And not too much, you know, we don't want like oil overload over here, but we want that flavor. And then get this fresh kale, which is going to make all the difference. Good. It's as if I make things for the first time and they're good. Ooh, a little crispy edge. Oh, a bit of cheese action over there. Definitely try this, something a little bit different, very, very tasty, quite easy, easy on the wallet, and a big crowd pleaser. As always, subscribe, give me a like, give me a comment, let me know what you think, you know, all these things. I'm listening to you.